years old. Agents with respect to what the law will do or the principal or by administration, that is public officers and employees with respect to the property. Clerks of court and other officers and employees connected with the administration relatively incapacitated clerk employees and other officers and employees. However, just contrary to the legislators and warders and agents of the estate, there are persons who are incapacitated to give consent. So these are persons who cannot enter into a contract because they are incapacitated to give consent. And when we talk about incapacity to give consent, it's either absolute incapacity or relative incapacity. So who are the persons that are absolutely incapacitated to give consent? These are unemancipated minors. When we talk about minors, these are persons who are less than 18 years old. Those are insane or demented persons. And those are deaf mutes who do not know how to read and write. So what is the effect of the contracts that are entered into by absolutely incapacitated persons? The contract is voidable if there's only one party to the contract that is absolutely incapacitated. So if the contract of sale is entered into by a minor and a person with capacity to enter into a contract, let's say by a person who is already 21 years old, then the contract is voidable. It simply means that the contract is valid until it is annulled by the party who is a minor, right? But if both parties are absolutely incapacitated, just like when a contract is entered into by a minor and the other party is insane. So what is the effect to the contract? The contract is unenforceable. Okay? However, contracts entered into by an insane or demented person during their lucid interval, this is the interval that the insane person is sane or has a sound mind. So, what is the effect if the contract entered into by an insane person is entered into during the lucid interval? So, the effect is that the contract is valid. The contract also that is entered into by these absolutely incapacitated persons with respect to their with respect to the food or other necessaries sold to them are also valid and is liable for the reasonable price. The other incapacity that we are discussing earlier is what we call the relative incapacity. Diba? There are two kinds of incapacity, the absolute incapacity and the relative incapacity. So who are the persons that are relatively incapacitated to enter into a contract? Number one, husband and wife are relatively incapacitated to enter into a contract, selling or disposing their respective properties to each other during the marriage. Okay. Guardians, with respect to the properties of their ward. So, let's say for example, your father and mother died, and then you are the only child. But when they died, you are still a minor. You are still 12 years old. So, what the law will do is that you will be under guardianship. So the court will appoint a guardian for you. Let's say, for example, you have an uncle. Your uncle can be appointed as a guardian. In other words, you and your uncle cannot enter into a contract disposing your property that you inherited from your father and mother, or the property that you acquire while you are still a minor and under guardianship. Agents with respect to the property of of the principal whose administration or sale was entrusted to them. Let's say, for example, I contracted you as my agent to sell my property, you cannot be the buyer of the property, of my property. That is under the contract of agency. Executors and administrators with respect to the estate under administration. And then public officers and employees with respect to the property of the state whose administration was entrusted to them. So let us say, for example, if you are a mayor of the city and here's the property of the city that is for sale, you cannot be the buyer of that property. Okay. Justices and judges, prosecuting attorneys, clerks of court, and other officers and employees connected with the administration of justice with respect to the property and rights under litigation. So let's say, for example, there's a collection case filed by A, and then against B, and then in the process of the collection case, the court ordered attachment of the property of B, and then after that, the property will be sold under public auction. The judge, the clerk of court, where the case of collection was filed, cannot be the buyer of the property which is under attachment and under public auction. So, what are the effects of the contracts entered into by relatively incapacitated person? With respect to the sale of or donation of properties or transfer of properties of the husband and wife, or public officers and employees, or justices, judges, and prosecuting attorneys, and clerk of courts and other officers and employees, the contracts entered into by these persons are void. However, those contracts entered into between guardians and ward, agents and the principal, as well as executors and administrators of the estate, are considered to be voidable. So, you take a look at the video on voidable contracts and void contracts for further understanding